Welcome to this week's OK at Work with myself, Sarah Sawyer, and my colleague, Russell Berger, attorneys with Offit Kurman. And today we are talking about conversations that business owners, managers, supervisors should or shouldn't have with their employees regarding pregnancy, family planning, what their intentions are, where they're headed in that regard, whether they're deciding to have children. Something that comes up sometimes where employers will ask me, especially in smaller businesses, when they're trying to plan accordingly for people of childbearing age to potentially go out, or different, people who might be looking at family planning, might be taking leaves of absence. They'll sometimes ask me, well, can I ask my employee about this? And what advice do you give them when you get those types of questions, Russell?
I don't usually answer can I, but I tend to answer should I? And the answer is no, you should not. And there's a couple of reasons for that. And kind of recognizing that, particularly in a lot of, if you have a good supervisory relationship, you are building those bridges. You are connecting with the person. Maybe you are mentoring or providing some level of like career guidance as well. And so it seems like something that might fall kind of within the rubric of what you would be talking about. But to me, it's just a problematic topic to get into because the issue is, again, it's not specifically unlawful to ask the question, but if you ask the question, what information do you get back in response? How does that affect your decision making, or how is it perceived to have affected your decision making? So if you get an answer that isn't necessarily in the best interest of the business, um, you know, and then the person doesn't get promoted, doesn't get that next opportunity. Is there a connection? And even if there isn't a connection, is there the perception of a connection? And that can be legally actionable. That's where you open yourself up to discrimination claims, and that's just not a door you necessarily want to open.
Yeah, and we see this with hiring and things as well. What types of questions do you really want to be asking employees? What do you really want to know? Because it might subconsciously come into your decision making, and then as you mentioned, also the perception of it as well. So now that once you have that information, even if you make a decision that impacts that individual for a completely legitimate reason, like you decide not to hire someone because you feel they're not qualified or something, if you've asked a question that has elicited some type of information that indicates that they might get pregnant soon, or are looking at that and might go out on leave, now it looks like maybe you made the decision for that reason. And so do you really want to know that information? I see this also in other areas too, involving trying to decide who to share what information with. So we deal with a lot of ADA accommodation requests and things like that, and trying to keep some of the information related to these things tight within the organization, because once other folks within the organization know it, you can run into similar issues where decisions might be made right after someone tells an employer that they're pregnant, that are discipline related, but now it's looking too connected. Whereas if a supervisor didn't even know that employee had just disclosed that to HR and then has to discipline the employee, it won't look so connected. So really trying
Yeah.
to keep it tight.
Right. And that's why, for the same reasons you were saying. I mean, that's why, job applications don't ask for a date of birth, because you're going to find out age, and age is something that, is a protected classification and could open you up to discrimination claims. So you don't want to gather that information at that stage. Even if someone's resume may say the year they graduated from college, and you can do the math, you still don't want to do something as overt as ask for information that's going to be protected. So I think that's a really important point to consider. And while at the same time recognizing that, even though, you may have that mentor-mentee relationship, that close personal relationship with an employee that you supervise, it's still important to remember that it's still an employment relationship. And no matter how close you are, no matter how connected you are in a work setting, it's just, you're still an employer, you're still a supervisor, and there's just certain things that you shouldn't get into because of that. And yeah, it might be not natural. It might be less than how you would comport yourself in a outside of work setting with other human beings. It might not be your natural way to act, but that's kind of the point of being an employer is you have to police your behavior a little bit.
Yeah, and that's really the tougher areas are those areas where those casual conversations, the small talk, the more just personal conversations, and keeping that in mind and keeping those boundaries in mind and thinking through that, because some of the stuff like what you put on an application or how you handle the HR process or accommodation requests are much more formal, and you can think through those more and they're not happening in the moment. But that's definitely an area where I see more of a challenge for employers is just you kind of let your guard down, you're having a conversation. So definitely something to be mindful of in those interactions.
Right. Well, and as you well know, when we see charges of discrimination, evidence from those conversations are in those charges. This person asked me about my family planning. This person asked me about my age and if I want to work anymore. Whatever it is, it gets thrown into those charges. So, just being mindful of the fact that what you say can be thrown back at you in the context of a charge, is just important guidance for employers.
Yeah, and with text messages, work chats, all of those things. So the more of those things that we have in the workplace, they're great tools for easy access to communication with employees, but there's a lot of tendency to get more casual and more personal in those forms of communication as well than you would in an email, in a meeting, maybe, or in more formal settings for sure. Well, thank you, Russell. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Sarah.